Breaking. 3 shockwaves hitting St. James Park right now, and the Toon Army needs to hear all of them. First, a senior defender has just called out what's missing from our identity this season. Second, our captain might not even start Wednesday, and that could be the smartest move Eddie Howe makes. Third, a Premier League manager who played under Arsene Wenger just admitted Howe is better in one critical area. The third story? It reveals why Howe's method is non-negotiable and why Sunday's collapse hurt him so deeply. 3 stories, 1 brutal truth, and a question only you can answer. Has Newcastle lost its edge, or is this just the growing pain before we find the formula that wins trophies? What's up, Toon Army? This is NUFC Quick News, 3 stories, 1 vision, 0 filter. We're diving deep into the mentality crisis Dan Burn just exposed, the rotation gamble that could make or break our week, and the coaching revelation that proves Eddie Howe is the real deal. Let's get into it. Dan Burn has publicly stated that Newcastle United are missing the dark arts and physical intimidation that defined their underdog era. After Sunday's 3-1 collapse at West Ham, Burn told the Chronicle that the Magpies no longer play with the housery that once allowed them to bully opponents and win ugly. He pointed to Arsenal as the blueprint, a top team that mixes elite football with aggression and gamesmanship. Burn believes Newcastle can rediscover that edge without sacrificing quality, but right now, it's nowhere to be found. Dan Burn doesn't do interviews like this unless something is seriously wrong, and what he's saying should terrify every Newcastle fan, not because we're losing, losses happen, but because we've lost our identity. Let's rewind. When Newcastle qualified for the Champions League in 2022-23, we were the team nobody wanted to face. Why? Because we didn't just outplay you, we outfought you, out-hustled you, and made life miserable for 90 minutes. We pressed like maniacs, we got in faces, we won second balls, we turned street James's Park into a fortress where visiting teams knew they'd leave with bruises, not just a defeat. Eddie Howe built that identity on one mantra: intensity is our identity, and it worked. We bullied teams, we won ugly when we had to. Charlie Nicholas called us the most annoying team in the league. That was a badge of honor. But Sunday at West Ham, that team didn't show up. 0 physicality, 0 intimidation, 0 fight, and Burn knows it. He's not talking about tactical tweaks or formations, he's talking about mentality. He's talking about the psychological warfare that elite teams deploy, the little fouls, the time wasting, the needle, the refusal to let opponents breathe. Arsenal do it brilliantly. They'll pass you off the pitch, then rotate fouls, slow the game down, crowd the referee, and make you hate every second. Atletico Madrid have built a dynasty on it. Even Liverpool under Klopp, when they pressed, they made it personal. That's what separates top 4 teams from trophy winners. Newcastle had that. Now, we don't, and Burn's right to call it out. Here's the tactical reality. Newcastle's away form is a disaster. 3 straight home wins, then we leave Tyneside and collapse. Why? Because away from street James's Park, we can't rely on the crowd. We have to bring the intensity ourselves. We have to impose physicality. We have to make teams uncomfortable. And we're not doing it. Look at the squad evolution. We've added technical quality. Harvey Barnes, Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, world-class players. But in that process, have we softened? Have we prioritized elegance over edge? Burn thinks so, and he played under Howe during the dark arts era, so he knows what's missing. The financial angle matters too. Newcastle are under FFP scrutiny. We can't spend recklessly. That means we need to maximize every advantage we have, and one of those advantages is being the most difficult team to play against in England. If we lose that, we're just another mid-table side with a big stadium. The timeline is urgent. We face Athletic Club on Wednesday at home, then Brentford away on Sunday. If we don't rediscover that nastiness, that willingness to grind, to frustrate, to play on the edge, we'll drop more points. And in a congested league table, every point is the difference between European football and mediocrity. What do you think, Toon Army? Can Newcastle bring back the dark arts without crossing the line, or have we evolved past that style forever? Drop your take below, because if Burn's calling it out publicly, you know it's a problem. If you want us to keep breaking down the real issues, not just the surface level stuff, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. But here's the twist. Burn's comments came just 24 hours before another crisis hit the squad, and this one involves our captain. If you think missing the dark arts is bad, wait until you hear who might not even start Wednesday. Bruno Guimaraes missed training on Tuesday due to illness, and is now a doubt for Wednesday's Champions League clash with Athletic Club. The 27-year-old Brazilian captain issued a public apology to fans after Sunday's West Ham defeat and called for the Toon Army's support, but he may not even be on the pitch. Eddie Howe faces a dilemma. Rush Bruno back for a must-win European game, or rest him for Sunday's Premier League trip to Brentford? The solution is clear, but Bruno won't like it. This is where Eddie Howe separates himself from average managers, and it's where Newcastle's depth will be tested. Bruno Guimaraes is not just Newcastle's captain, he's the engine, the heartbeat, the player who makes everyone around him better. He dictates tempo, wins the ball back, drives forward, and orchestrates attacks. He's irreplaceable. Except, he's not, and Howe proved that 2 weeks ago. Remember the Benfica game? Sandro Tonali was struck by illness 24 hours before kickoff, major concern, but Howe didn't panic. He trusted Lewis Miley, a 19-year-old academy product, to step in. Result? 3-0 victory. Miley was everywhere. He pressed, passed, and played with maturity beyond his years. Newcastle didn't just cope without Tonali, they thrived. Now the same situation has hit Bruno, and Howe needs to make the same call. Rest him. Here's why this is the right decision, even if Bruno hates it. Fixture priority. Wednesday's Champions League game against Athletic Club is important, but Sunday's trip to Brentford is more important. Why? Because Premier League points determine everything. Qualification for Europe, revenue, squad morale, and whether Newcastle finish in the top 4 or scramble for 7th. The Champions League? We're already through to the knockouts. Yes, winning matters for seeding and momentum. But if the choice is between having Bruno at 70% on Wednesday or 100% on Sunday, you take Sunday every time. Fixture congestion is real. Newcastle are playing twice a week for the next month. Bruno wants to start every game, that's his mentality, and we love him for it, but that's not sustainable. Howe has to manage his load. If Bruno plays Wednesday while still feeling ill, he risks either A. making the illness worse, B. playing poorly and losing confidence, or C. picking up an injury because his body is compromised. None of those outcomes help Newcastle. The depth exists. This is the key point. Newcastle have Sandro Tonali, Lewis Miley, Joe Willock, and Sean Longstaff as midfield options. That's genuine quality. Tonali is a £55 million signing who was brilliant before his suspension. Miley is the future. Willock has experience. Longstaff knows Howe's system inside out. Can any of them do what Bruno does? No. But they can do enough for one game. The precedent is there. Howe already made this call with Tonali against Benfica. It worked. The team responded. The young player stepped up. The crowd got behind them, and Newcastle won comfortably. Why wouldn't Howe repeat that formula? Now, let's talk about the risk. Bruno is a warrior. He'll want to play. He'll tell Howe he's fine. He'll push himself. And if Howe benches him, Bruno might feel disrespected or undervalued. That's the emotional cost. But Howe has to be the adult in the room. He has to protect Bruno from himself. Great managers make unpopular decisions. Sir Alex Ferguson benched Roy Keane. Pep Guardiola rotates Kevin De Bruyne. Jurgen Klopp managed Mohamed Salah's minutes. This is what elite management looks like. And here's the tactical reality. If Bruno plays and struggles, it affects the entire team. He's the pivot. If he's not sharp, the press doesn't work. The transitions slow down. The creativity dries up. Newcastle become disjointed. But if Miley or Tonali starts and plays with freedom, no pressure, just go out and play your game, the team might actually look sharper. Do you think Howe should risk Bruno on Wednesday, or trust the depth and prioritize Sunday's Premier League clash? This is the kind of decision that defines seasons. Let me know your call in the comments. And if you're learning something new about squad management and fixture strategy, hit that subscribe button, because this is the analysis you won't get anywhere else. But wait, there's one more story, and it explains why Eddie Howe's methods are so intense in the first place. A Premier League manager who played under Arsene Wenger just revealed something incredible about Howe's coaching, and it connects everything we've talked about today. Jack Wilshere, now manager of Luton Town, has publicly stated that Eddie Howe is the best on-grass coach he's ever worked with, better than Arsene Wenger. Speaking on the Winterview podcast with journalist Henry Winter, Wilshere praised Howe's energy, detail, and relentless intensity during training sessions at Bournemouth. He admitted that he clashed with Howe at times because the intensity was overwhelming, but Howe refused to compromise. Wilshere credits Howe with changing the way he viewed coaching. This insight reveals why "intensity is our identity" isn't just a slogan, it's Eddie Howe's DNA. This is the story that connects everything, and it's the reason why Sunday's West Ham performance devastated Eddie Howe. Jack Wilshere is not just any player, he's an Arsenal legend. He came through under Arsène Wenger, one of the greatest tactical minds in football history. Wenger built dynasties. He revolutionized English football. He managed at the highest level for over 2 decades. And yet, when Wilshere talks about coaching pure, on the grass, day-to-day coaching, he says Eddie Howe is the best he's ever seen. That's remarkable, and it tells you everything you need to know about why Howe has taken Newcastle from relegation candidates to Champions League regulars in less than 4 years. Let's break down what Wilshere actually said. He made a distinction. Wenger was the best manager, the vision, the belief, the man management. But Howe is the best coach. The sessions, the details, the intensity. That's not an insult to Wenger, it's a recognition that Howe's superpower is extracting maximum performance through relentless preparation. Wilshere described Howe's training sessions as overwhelming. He said he clashed with Howe because the intensity was too much. He literally swore at Howe and said, "Gaffer, I can't keep up with this intensity. Some days, let's just settle down a little bit." And Howe's response? No. Howe told Wilshere that the players at Bournemouth, Charlie Daniels, Simon Francis, journeymen who worked their way up from League Two, had to train at that intensity to compete in the Premier League. There was no compromise. If Wilshere couldn't handle it, they'd pick and choose when he trained, but the standard wouldn't drop. That's conviction, that's leadership, and that's why Newcastle United are where they are. Think about what Howe inherited: a club in free fall, a squad demoralised, a fan base terrified of relegation. And Howe implemented the same philosophy he used at Bournemouth. Intensity is our identity. He didn't lower the bar because Newcastle were struggling. He raised it. He demanded more. He made training harder than matches. And the players bought in. Fast forward to today. Newcastle have won silverware. We've qualified for the Champions League. We've beaten elite teams. And it's all built on that same foundation, relentless intensity. But here's where it connects to story 1. Dan Burn said the dark arts have disappeared. He said Newcastle no longer play with the physicality and nastiness that made us impossible to beat. Why? Because the intensity has dropped. And that's what destroyed Howe on Sunday. He didn't see the West Ham collapse coming because Newcastle have been brilliant at home. 3 straight wins, dominant performances, but away from Street, James's Park, without the crowd, the intensity vanished. And when the intensity goes, everything Howe has built collapses. Wilshere's comments prove that Howe's method is non-negotiable. He will not compromise, he will not soften, he will not accept less than 100% effort in training or on the pitch. That's why players either love him or can't handle him. There's no middle ground. And that's why this Bruno situation, story 2, is so interesting. Howe has to make the hard call. He has to bench his captain if Bruno isn't fully fit. Because playing Bruno at 70% contradicts the entire philosophy. It sends the message that effort and intensity are optional. And Howe will never send that message. The financial and structural context matters too. Newcastle's success under PIF is built on Howe's system. The ownership group could hire any manager in the world. They've stuck with Howe because his methods work. He's taken a club with FFP restrictions and turned them into Champions League regulars without spending like Chelsea or Manchester United. How? By maximizing every player through coaching, by making average players good and good players great, by instilling a culture of intensity. But culture is fragile. One bad week can crack it. One lazy performance can spread. And if Dan Burn is calling out the lack of dark arts, and Jack Wilshere is explaining that Howe demands intensity above all else, then the message to the squad is clear. Sunday was unacceptable. Wednesday has to be different. Do you think Howe's intensity-first philosophy is still the right approach for Newcastle? Or do we need to adapt as we face bigger, more technical opponents? Let me know in the comments because this is the defining question for the rest of the season. And if you appreciate the depth we just went into connecting player quotes, coaching philosophy, and squad psychology, hit that subscribe button. This is the kind of analysis that helps you understand what's really happening at your club. So, let's pull it all together. 3 stories, 1 through line. Dan Burn says the dark arts are gone. Jack Wilshere says Howe's coaching is all about relentless intensity. And Bruno Guimaraes might sit out Wednesday because Howe has to prioritize long-term squad health over short-term emotion. Here's what it means. Newcastle are at a crossroads. We've evolved from underdogs to established Premier League contenders. But in that evolution, we've lost the edge that made us great. We've softened. We've become more technical, more polished, but less nasty. Eddie Howe knows this, Dan Burn knows this. And Wednesday night against Athletic Club is the first test of whether Newcastle can rediscover that intensity without Bruno, without the dark arts, and with the spotlight fully on them. If they pass the test, it proves the culture is still intact. If they fail, it proves Dan Burn is right, and something fundamental has gone missing. Alright, Toon Army, that's your deep dive 3 stories, 1 brutal truth, and a whole lot of questions that only Wednesday night will answer. If you got value from this breakdown, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me which of these 3 stories matters most for Newcastle's season: the missing dark arts, Bruno's illness, or Howe's intensity philosophy. I read every single comment, and your perspective shapes the next video. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is where we go deeper than the headlines. This is where we respect your intelligence. This is NUFC Quick News. Until next time, stay proud, stay loud, and always keep the faith, Howe the lads.